Okay.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today on this beautiful fall day. We're all excited about beginning. In case you're not sure what an Odyssey of the Mind team is, it is a team that has between 5 to 7 students who work together each week to solve a long-term problem. And we'll be explaining what that is. You'll be working with them from now through a little bit of March, and you're going to be working on team building and trying to play to different individual strengths. And you want to make sure that that solution that they create is performed in 8 minutes or less. That is one number you have to remember. 8 minutes for the problem that they solve. And you'll need to adhere to the structures that are set forth in the formal problem, because there's a formal problem that you'll be looking at once your teams decide which ones they're going to do. And there are certain rules in there they'll have to stick to, but there's tons of room for creativity within that. Also, at your team meetings, you're going to be practicing spontaneous problems, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And you'll have to remember that there are a maximum of 7 brains that may work together on the problem. So if you have a team that starts solving and one team member has to leave the team, you cannot get another team member on the team to replace them, because that would mean 8 brains will have worked on it. Now, we're a little bit more gentler with primary teams. So you may have heard, and this is true, that primary teams may have 8 team members. Primary teams may have 8 team members. Don't really recommend it because those little guys do take a lot of attention. But if you have a team and only like a coach or 2 that are willing to do it, you can have up to 8 team members for that primary team. Okay, one thing that you should know is there are examples of performances out there. So we wanted to share just a couple with you so that you just get a flavor for what Odyssey of the Mind looks like. So we're going to share 2 very, honestly, just like very short examples of what pieces of Odyssey performances look like. And then you can see this link down here at the bottom. VWF is Virtual World Finals Solutions. And when you go into that, you'll see a page like this here down on the bottom right, which will show, you'll see tons of different examples that you can have your team members watch. But let's watch just a few snippets. Please know that Ginny, our treasurer, created these, and she added the subtitles. When you are videotaping your team, you will not be adding subtitles, and you will not have the music in the background and the kind of flashy background to it. This was what we showed during our state finals last year to recognize teams that had won.
To farm emergency and say, okay, I'll be right back. Oh, well, I need some whoa! How much is this awesome rainbow bean? How am I supposed to make bread out of this? Whoa! Who are you? And why is there a humongous green vine? Oh, it seems like the ingredients for nice seasonings. Let's go! I got the nice ingredients. Oh, well, you put some back home.
So that was an example from one of our teams last year that did the classics problem. As you can see, there was like a fairy tale theme to it.
And you can see that it was in person. This next one is a video-based presentation.
Begin time. Greetings, my name is Professor Donald Ayers, and I am here today to share a story, a very cautionary tale about how we rely on electronics.
Whoa, look at that massive wave. This will be the best one yet.
Welcome to Alexiana.
Wait, violent. Every day you ask me to do things, then you should be able to do yourself. This is your first task. You don't need me to come. Wait, I need that.
Who's in town?
Why are you making that? And do things myself. I can do it myself.
And that is why you should rely on electronics.
All right, so those are just a couple examples. That was problem, Geneva, which one was that?
I think it was problem 2.
Two,
Yeah,
that's
it was
what I
problem 2 because it had the device. Yep.
Yeah, the technology, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And so I really encourage you to go to this link. We will be posting this up on our Nova East website. So you can go to the link and you can share snippets with your teams. And we think that's a really good thing to do. So one thing that you need to make sure that you know is your 5-digit membership number. If your school has bought a membership already, then your coordinator has that number and will be sharing it with you. Make sure that you press them if they haven't already, because this is a place that you'll be able to access those member resources. So for instance, let me just get out of this and go to the website. If you go to the Odyssey of Mind website here at odysseyofthemind.com, you will see there's tons of information about Odyssey, but if you go to under teams, you'll go to member resources to find the link to where to go to. There's also the synopses of the problem, the program guide, which is important for you guys to read, the clarifications. That means if you have a question specific to the problem, you're like, I don't understand what to do with this, or can we change this thing about, or what is this what this means? Basically, this is, and feel free to chime in if I say something that you want to clarify, board members. There's also the historic figures list here. So in a moment, I'll have Abby talk about that. And the world, actually, we'll come back to that, Abby, a little bit later, because they don't know what the problems are yet. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. But when you go to member resources, everybody, this is where you'd put in your 5-digit membership number and your code. So when you put that in, like I have for Campbell, you'll see that there's all this information for you. There's the full problem. So instead of just the synopses, if you, like, for instance, if your team is looking into tricycle transport, you would click on this and get a PDF of the entire problem. All of the forms that you need for your problem, because your team does have to fill out forms. However, Division 1 teams, their coach can help them with that and have them fill that out for them. There's a style form, a cost form. There's even a team contract if you want your team members to fill that out. Certificates, all of that is right on here. And there's even stuff about registering for the tournament, the historic figures for problem 3, all of that's on here. So you'll use your membership number to check out those resources. Remember, you'll go to the team section to do that. You'll enter in that membership number and the zip code, and then you'll be able to go to that area that has all those resources. This is also where you will sign up for the state tournament. So you would just click on tournament registration. You'd be able to sign up there. Sometimes coordinators will sign you up. Just check with your coordinator to find out if they're doing that or if they want you to do that. Sometimes it's helpful if you kind of get online and do it together. Then step 3 would be to sign up for our website, because we also have resources for you that we post online and updates for what's going on. You're going to see that there'll be a place for you to go to enter your email address. So let me just go to that website quickly. This is our Nova East website. And we just posted something this morning about a spontaneous problem. We're going to be posting those every week. And if you scroll down, you'll find here is where you can enter your email address. The website is novaeastodysseythemind.wordpress.com. So
I pasted it in the chat. So if people
put it in the chat. So if you want to do that right now, we highly recommend that. It's a great place to get other resources. I want to direct you to coaches training videos we made.
I'm sorry, how did you get to the spontaneous problems again?
The spontaneous,
Yeah.
This one will be posted every week, and it'll be posted on the front page of our Nova East website.
Okay.
So it'll come straight to the top of our postings. And if you follow the website, you'll actually get an email that says Nova East, and it'll take you right to the website and show you what's been posted.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you subscribe in the lower right, like Pam was saying, if you put your email in at the lower right, then anytime we post a new spontaneous or we post new information that we have, you'll get an email with that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the spontaneous problems, they're basically like to help the kids practice for when they have a spontaneous problem at the tournament.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah,
exactly.
they're just present.
Yes.
We'll get more into that later.
Yeah,
Okay.
we will. Last year we made a bunch of coaches training videos too. Like there's a nice Balsa week break things video, which has stuff that your team members can watch and you as a coach can watch. Abby and her husband, Jonathan, did a Theater 101 video for you. So that's a good one for your kids to watch. In fact, all teams would benefit from watching that, because all teams have a little bit of theater in theirs because they all have to produce a skit. So you'll want to make sure you take a look at those. Remember, that's in Coaches training videos. There's also stuff on style training. There's our creativity training that Nancy and I, my co-director, and I did last year, which is still pertinent information. There's stuff on Discord, which is a platform that you can use, kind of like Zoom, only even better because you can store documents on there. So that shows your team how to use that resource. So those kind of resources would be helpful for you. There's also a spontaneous one down here, and I think also a primary one down there. There's also a resources section, which has some resources. And if you are a primary team, I just want to direct you down here to something that I created for Campbell coaches 1 year. It's a 3-day plan, and it takes you through just a possible plan for what you could do for 3 days, the first 3 meetings with your team members. So that might be a good thing to look through, just to give you an idea of what do I do with these kids, when they come to me, to make sure that you're getting them off on the right track. Okay. Step 4, once you've gotten familiar with all of these resources, and some of you may have already done this before already, is to meet with parents of team members to discuss safety tips and meeting places, and schedules and ways that they can support you. Because as the coaches, you are the front line helping the kids, but you can certainly ask those other parents for assistance. You're doing the big job. Please enlist them to help in other ways, especially closer to the tournament. You're going to want to have some help with wrangling. You may need them to meet with a small group, maybe 2 or 3, to paint sets or to work on costumes. And it's helpful to have an extra pair of hands to kind of manage things when you've got, because 7 kids, they may not seem like a lot, but it ends up feeling like a lot if you're all alone in it. Also, you're going to meet with your team, get to know them, let them get to know each other, because teamwork is a hallmark of Odyssey. I'm in trouble going from slide to slide. Okay. And then, like I said, very valuable to watch some of these examples. You could even send the link to parents of team members and have them pick a few videos, or you could pick a few that all of you watch and all of your teammates watch for homework, and then kind of comment on them when you get together next time. Step 6 would be to have your team choose a long-term problem. You probably don't want to do that the first meeting, and often not even the second meeting. Once the team members teams feel a little gelled, would be a good time to really look at those problem synopses and vote on or try to discuss what would be the best fit for your team. Every year, Odyssey
¿Me
comes.
pasas un cable para enchufar con outlet, please? Sorry, demasiado, Luis.
But you want to, every year, Odyssey comes out with different problems. There's always a problem that involves a vehicle, problem 1. Problem 2 always has a technical aspect. Problem 3 is classic, so that could be art or architecture or music, and this year it is music. Balsa structure, so they're always building a structure out of balsa that must hold weight, and that's the bulk of the points that they receive at the tournament is based on how strong their balsa structure is. And then there's a performance problem. It's often humorous, and it's often a very popular problem because a lot of the kids that get into it really enjoy the performance piece of it. And then there's always a primary problem too. And the great thing about the primary problem is that it is non-competitive. So these team members would not receive scores. They would simply get some feedback on their performance in the form of some positive sticky notes. They will be virtual sticky notes this year again, but they will get some comments on what they did. One thing to note is that kindergarten through 2nd grade students may also do any of the competitive problems. You could also have a kindergartner, 1st or 2nd grader on a team with older students. So they can do one of the other 5 problems. The trick is that only K through 2nd graders can do the primary problem. So if the tricycle problem appeals to older kids, unfortunately, they don't have access to that. The team that does the primary problem has to be made up of kindergarten, 1st and or 2nd grade students only. So when your team chooses a problem, they're going to choose one of these. And that's what we call the long-term problem. So when I speak of long-term problems, that's what I'm talking about. The synopses look like this, and you can find them online to look at with your team. Like I said, this is not the whole problem, but it will give you an overview of what each problem for the year entails. And these change every year, but these are the problems for this year. Escape Room, Odyssey Reinvention, classics name here, the musical production, and this is the one that makes us think about Hamilton. The Matryoshka structure, which is the balsa wood structure with like nesting structures. Life is a Circus, so a big circus theme, and then tricycle transport. So an interesting thing they've done this year is for the primary problem, they have infused the vehicle problem into primary. I think what they're doing is trying to groom some kids to try the vehicle problem in future years with a kind of non-competitive introduction to the primary problem and the vehicle problem. But if your K-2 team doesn't want to do that, they certainly could do one of the other problems. The trick is you need to check with your school. If you only have one membership, then only one team per school can do each of the problems. So if, for instance, a team at your school is already doing Life is a Circus, and then you also have a primary team that would like to do Life is a Circus, then your school would have to buy another membership. That said, rules are a little, just like I said, there can be 8 people on a primary team, eight team members. There can also be more than one primary team on a school membership. So like last year at Campbell, we had 2 primary teams and 1 competitive team, and we were able to just have 1 membership because an Odyssey membership covers as many primary teams as you want, and then 1 of each of the other competitive problems. So another great thing to do is to check out those training sessions, the training session videos that are on our Nova East website. Except for the dates, the information is still relevant. And I wanted to get into spontaneous problems. I wonder if, Geneva, do you want to kind of take over from here for a little bit?
Hi, everyone. Okay, so spontaneous problems. This year, the spontaneous well, the online version of the competition, all 7 will compete in spontaneous. So for the state tournament, that's what will happen. Teams won't know what the spontaneous problem is until they get there. So this is a secret up until you actually are participating, and then a secret after that. We have, so that when the teams are together, they'll be given this task and they'll have a certain amount of time to finish it. For the online competition, the spontaneous problems will all be verbal, but if the team is going to go to the in-person world finals, then they would need to practice verbal hands-on and verbal hands-on. And we'll talk a little bit about the different types later. Obviously, teamwork is a critically important part of the process. For verbal problems, a lot of times there's not that as much teamwork, but for the verbal hands-on and for the hands-on problems, teamwork is usually a scored and critical part of the process. The desire for these spontaneous problems is to get people to think on their feet. So the long-term problem shows creativity over a long period of time, and the spontaneous problems are meant to show creativity that, in the moment. We have a sample spontaneous problem, just to give you a flavor for how our website versions will run, and we can paste that link into the chat.
Yeah, you want me to copy it and put it in the chat?
Yeah, let's do that. Or you can just show it, and we can just show what it looks like. If you want to just take the link. Or maybe I can.
Here. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So links in the chat if you want to try it. And I'm going to just show you what it is too. It's night noise. Name a sound that you wouldn't want to hear in the middle of the night and why. And for instance, you might say, I wouldn't want to hear a fire alarm because my house might be burning down. Come up with a fun name so you can recognize your answer, and then put in your response and submit.
Yeah, we'll give you a minute or two if anyone wants to try it out. Then we'll look at the answers at the end. And this is very much like the spontaneous that we will, our Nova East spontaneous is very similar to this. There'll be a form, and the idea would be to have your teams work on the problem and then put their favorite 3 answers into the form. And then at the end of the week, we'll collate the some sample or best responses and send that out to the web. We did this all last year, and I think teams had a lot of fun doing it. So we're going to do that again.
We also thought it could take the pressure off of some coaches, because it's been a crazy 2 years. So this way you don't have to think as hard about the spontaneous piece of your meetings, because it's all up on the website, and you can go over it with your team. They can decide on their top 3 that they want to submit. And they can use this Google form right here. This is actually the one for this week. It was just posted today. Responses are due next Saturday by midnight. So if you're meeting with your team this week, we encourage you to do that with your team. You'll put in your email, your school membership name, coaches, team name, if you have one, and then.
So there's a question from the group about whether primary teams do spontaneous problems, and we strongly encourage you to do spontaneous problems at every session, because it really helps you practice brainstorming, and you can even use it as brainstorming for people's team problems. I think last year in the virtual tournament, the primary teams did in fact do spontaneous, and I think the expectation is they would do it again this year. For those online tournaments. In the World Finals tournament, the primary teams don't attend, so they would not be responsible for doing the hands-on or the verbal hands-on, but it is still a great idea to do those kinds of practice problems as well, because again, it teaches you things that you can use then, the skills for thinking and creatively that you can use in your long-term problem. On the virtual spontaneous problems, there's typically a time limit. I don't know what it was exactly last year, but it's usually 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 minutes. Maybe it's only 5 minutes. It depends on the problem, but it's definitely well contained within a 10-minute window.
Yeah, and when they do it for our state virtual tournament, basically once you click the link with your team, the timer starts running. And so they need to submit their answers by the end of the time limit, because at the end of the time limit, it'll take whatever answers have been put in and submit them. So there is a time limit. They've set it up like that so that it mirrors what will happen in a normal tournament, so that it has that. But the difference is the team members actually get to confer a little bit more on their responses than they would in a normal tournament. In a normal tournament, they often have to be quiet during a verbal and think on their own, and then share what their thoughts are. Right. But this one they'll get to confer, which will be nice.
Yeah. Okay, if we go back to the beginning coach training, I think we can pick up the link for the responses.
Yeah. So let's see what people came up with. Okay.
We have a lot from previous years here, but we go down to the bottom, we can see some of the newer ones.
Okay.
Oops, maybe not that far.
It's going.
Anyway, we can see, I mean, we can just read some of them.
Yeah. So some for today. You wouldn't want to see breaking glass. I wouldn't want to hear a loud boom because it might be someone rolling down the stairs to get on an iPad game. I wouldn't want to hear mommy, my stomach feels funny because it means a long night with a sick kid. I wouldn't want to hear a fire engine because that would tell me somebody's house is on fire. I wouldn't want to hear my dog barking because it means I have to get up and let him out. I wouldn't want to hear rushing water because my toilet might be overflowing. Wouldn't want to, is that it? No, that's an older one actually. Do we have some more?
Yeah, if you look at some of the ones, the earlier ones, like up at the top, the game, the name was Lofty Loopers, playing because I'm afraid of flying, and Vampires R Us, coffin because that means I'm a sick vampire. Little horses, sing a lullaby because I'm a little horse. So you don't necessarily have to use the words the way that we would normally use, or interpret the problem the way that you would normally do. You can be out of the box and different. So, all right.
Okay.
So I think the next thing we are going to go through is a little bit about the schedule for this year. So I don't know, Pam, do you want to?
Yeah, so the schedule for this year, there'll be another coaches info session actually that will be run by the state. And since it is only a state tournament this year, I highly recommend going. I do think that ours is going to be often very valuable. So I'm glad you're here too, because it's often good to hear things twice and from different people. And then you can kind of compare and ask questions based on that. But we're very glad you're here today. We still do encourage you to go that Wednesday night, 7 p.m. And we will be sending out a link for that coaches info session. On the 12th of December, team registration opens. You don't have to register right away, but you want to register by the end of November, or actually November 30th, not even the very end, because it goes to the 31st, right? So the 30th, you want to make sure you register for our state tournament. And then there'll be another coaches info session on February 6th. So these are dates you'll want to write down. Because
one thing I want to interrupt about, because for me, when I was a new coach, it was really confusing. And that is, you have a membership, which gives you access to the problems. But then the tournament is another thing, and you paid for that membership, but the tournament is another thing that you have to register for and pay for. And so for each tournament that you participate in, so if you participate in the state tournament, you will pay a smaller fee, usually, in this case, is $65. If you go to a world tournament, or if you participate in the virtual world finals, there will be other tournament fees and other registrations. So you will have multiple team registrations that you have to do depending on the tournaments that you participate in.
Check with your school coordinators, because sometimes your PTA funds that. So they may actually be either reimbursing the coaches, or sometimes the coordinator will go in and do it and get reimbursed themselves by the PTA. So make sure you definitely find out from your coordinator what the school is funding and what your team needs to fund. If the teams have to fund it, then often you can take, $10 from each kid and easily get that paid for. Sometimes team coaches decide to have kind of like a pot of money to buy supplies with. That just depends on what your parents decide when you guys meet together. So getting back to the schedule, when you start submitting, you can start submitting on the 6th of, the 13th of February. So the day before Valentine's Day, that opens, and it doesn't close until March 4th, which we're grateful for. They were talking about making it close mid-February. So at least they're leaving it open till March 4th. But you've got to have your long-term problems, all your paperwork in by then. And then spontaneous will open on the 6th. And this gives people a chance to really focus on submitting their long-term stuff before they have to worry about the spontaneous. Now, there will be access to some spontaneous practice problems from the state where you get to practice using that time limit and using the format of states. So that'll be a good thing to do with your teams as well in late February, early March. But you don't actually have to do the official spontaneous until March 6th through the 20th. Oops, what happened? It keeps doing that. When I click it, it goes to the next, and I can't get back. Okay. And then, as you can see from the schedule, judging starts in mid-March. If your team does the balsa structure, then there will be a weigh-in where they take their balsa structure and they actually have it weighed, and then they get to test how much weight it would hold. And this is important for scoring. So the NOVA one will happen at the MITRE Center on the 12th of March, and there'll be more information coming on that a little bit later down the road, because not all team members have to attend that. That can just be the coach maybe and a team member. And then on the 25th, that tournament judging ends, and at the 1st of April Fool's Day will be the Virginia tournament. We're also planning to do a session we're planning to post the videos of all of the teams that give us their approval for a day so that you can go online and actually watch with your team various solutions, which is the huge fun of the tournament, is actually getting to see other teams and watch them present. So this gives them a chance to do that. We did not offer that last year, and it was really felt by our team members. So we decided to add that along this year. So that will be coming as well.
One thing, so we had a question about the tournaments this year, and it is true that there is no regional tournament. There's not time to get a regional tournament in before February 13th. And so you'll go right to the state tournament, and the state tournament is a virtual tournament, but it is a prerequisite before you could compete in the world tournament. If you are interested in going on to the world tournament, you have to compete in that state tournament first. So yes, it's a little bit weird that we aren't going to have an in-person tournament as a precursor, but that's how it's going to be.
So I don't really understand then if the state tournament is all virtual. I guess I don't really understand what's at the MITRE Center. Like, is there a tournament where they're all in person like they did pre-COVID?
No. So the MITRE tournament is just the balsa weigh-in. So that will be just the part where the balsa will be, and it's a weigh-in and a crushing of the balsa wood at MITRE. But that's not the performance of the problem. The problem performance would be a video, like it was. And the
balsa weigh-in, is that one's one of the problems?
Yeah, it's just problem 4. So for problem 4, they have a balsa structure that they build, and part of that is to crush it and to weigh how much it is, and that's part of the competition. And so they couldn't really do that not in person. So that will be in person in a garage, so that the air is flowing and to minimize the transfer of.
Got it. And then the other question that I had was, so I get that the tournament judging has this time window, but is it like, are you supposed to submit a pre-recorded video, or do you just get a time slot and then show up?
No, it's a pre-recorded video that you'll submit, but it has to be recorded in one. We have a slide later on in the deck that talks about what the requirements are for the video, and that's part of the reason for the coach submission. on the 6th of February. That coach information session is to talk about that more. But
Okay.
it needs to be a video where the camera is in one spot and records the whole performance in one swoop, as if you were in a tournament in a physical space. It can be an online only. I mean, so if you have only Zoom sessions, it can be a recording of a Zoom session where all cameras don't have to be on, but all cameras have to be visible on the Zoom session at all times. So
Yeah.
there are lots of requirements about it, and that we'll talk about that later.
Okay, so unless our group chooses problem 4, we don't actually have to go anywhere. We would just submit a video, and then the judges will judge it between March 11th and March 25th.
Correct. For the state tournament, that's true. If you were going to go to the world finals in person after going through the state, I mean, if you're thinking of that direction, then you would go to a physical place and perform physically for 8 minutes.
Okay.
But yeah. For
The
the
other
state
thing the other thing that I have a question about is, do you guys have like a handy list of dates that we can send out that the coaches can send out to parents on the team? Just like, here's 1, here's 2. Like, this is all super, super helpful information. But like, if you have like a cheat sheet of them in a nutshell, here are all the things that parents on the team need to know. Here's what by this. That would be really helpful.
I'm making a note of that, a cheat sheet of dates. Okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot. I mean, and some of it, like, it sounds like some of it kind of depends on the team as to what. So that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I don't think I would include all of these dates because it might confuse the team members, but I do think like some of them, like by this date, the team has to have submitted as video by this date. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then
Okay.
the other question that I have is about the school membership. So if your school has one membership, do you just basically jockey with all the other teams about what problems you want your group to do, or like what are the ones that your group chooses, or like how, like, is that, or I mean, what? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Or it probably depends on the coordinator and how that school's been run before. I mean, sometimes we tried to share the membership so we didn't have to afford the other memberships, and so sometimes we ranked the problems, and then based on the discussion amongst the teams, we would get a different problem. But it really just depends on the school and how many teams you have and how the coordinator is running it. So I would suggest you talk with your coordinator.
So
Okay.
if I can pop in really fast, I am their coordinator and we're all new. So only one coach has experience with Odyssey of the Mind at all. And that was not as a coach, but as a competitor.
Okay.
So we will be utilizing those office hours that you had posted on your website before.
Okay.
But I actually, the Tuckahoe teams are going to stay on. I have to run to another meeting, but I will be emailing you because I'm very confused on the membership and how many we need on the school level, because we have three through grades 3 and 5, and we have 1 K and 2 team. So we have 4 teams total, and I just can't figure out what I should be.
So why don't we take that offline? So we
Yes,
and
absolutely.
we'll be happy to discuss with you later.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Yes. Feel free to email me. I've got so that you're the Tuckahoe coordinator, right?
I am. Yes.
I can call you if you want to email me.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Hey,
All
Amy,
right.
Marvelous. Thank you so much.
hey, Amy,
One more question, excuse me. It's about membership, because you just said about pretty much except for problem 4, everything is virtual. But in the membership, there are 2 prices, one for virtual, one in person. So do we just choose virtual then?
So maybe, I think we have some more information about that later, Pam. So do we want to just keep going through the presentation, and then at the end, maybe hold your question until the end, and if we haven't answered it, then we can come back to it. Is that all right, Carolyn?
yeah, I just wanted to let our wonderful coordinator, who is heroic in taking on that effort, know that my daughter participated in Odyssey of the Mind, and her coaches were fantastic, but like, they were so efficient and such a well-oiled machine that like the rest of the group parents didn't really have to do all that much. So I was just going to let her know that I'm sure that our parents would be happy if she reached out to them, but that was that.
Okay. Great.
Awesome.
Thanks. All right, and yeah, let's move on, but we'll definitely address more questions about the membership later. And there really isn't an in-person tournament. for our state. So the BOLSA weigh-in is really just weighing that structure. That is the only thing that is in-person activity, but it is not actually performing. And there's access to those other problems, which we'll talk about even more later. Okay, so what do coaches do?
Nice.
Yes, okay. So what do coaches do? Well, obviously you're the scheduler. So you're gonna meet with your parents, find out how much time and where teams want to meet. But they often meet for 1 to 2 hours a week, and they often meet more frequently once the date gets closer. They can meet in homes, community centers, churches, or on virtual platforms. Some schools are allowing in-school meetings, but many aren't. So you're going to want to check that out to see if that's even an option. It wouldn't be on weekends. If you do it on weekends, then it's got to be at a different spot. It's great to organize some kind of field trip where you're going to find materials. Sometimes there's recyclable centers that you can go to, or museums and things to go visit. Of course, there was probably more of that when it was pre-COVID, but that's still an option. And you also want to be the key communicator of your schedule to parents. As a coach, you are also the facilitator. So you're helping that team stay organized, making sure that they're on track to achieve their goals, helping them read and understand the problem, but not giving them the ideas about how to solve them. And that's a really important piece we're going to kind of hammer, is the fact that it is not something you will solve for your team or give them ideas. And the parents need to understand that too, that they are not to give outside assistance. You want to keep them on track so that they'll be ready for the deadlines. It's a great idea to take notes at your meeting for your team members, or have a note taker. If you have a Division I team where there's, somebody who's really good at jotting down ideas, have them do that. But especially for primary teams, I wanted to bring this up because from week to week, you could end up having different solutions every single week if you don't keep notes and then remind them what they had decided the week before. So some of those decisions they're going to have to make and stick to so that they can stay on track. Otherwise, you'll be starting fresh every single time. You're going to want to lead brainstorming sessions without interjecting ideas or without telling somebody, oh, that's such a great idea. You want to really remain neutral in your responses to the ideas that kids come up with, because your response will communicate which idea you think is the best. So you want to really try to make sure that you are not putting your own judgment on that. You can help them evaluate and have them discuss which ones they think are most feasible, but please do not communicate your feelings about that. You're going to have to explain scoring and submit clarifications if teams have questions. Okay, the role of the coach. You want to make sure that respect is at the heart of your team. Odyssey members come in all different shapes and sizes. Although a couple of us on the board are former or current resource teachers for the gifted, Odyssey kids are not gifted, did not need to be labeled as gifted. So please do not assume that these are all gifted children. However, they are wonderful children with great ideas and the potential to be super creative. So whether they're soft-spoken, shy, energetic, opinionated, you want to make sure that you are respectful of them and that you keep their thoughts respectful of others too. So it's often great to come up with norms for how you want to handle things on your team. You can talk about this, you should talk about this very early on, because you also don't want every session to feel like a crazy birthday party where everybody's talking over each other and people aren't being respectful and people aren't listening to each other. You want to get that, communicate that it is an area where we need to be accepting all of the ideas, being positive and helping each other come to a great solution together. So team building opportunities are a great idea to get everybody involved. And sometimes it's great to go on outings together to keep it fun. Geneva, you want to take it from here a little bit?
Sure. So another thing that the coach can do is teach skills. So if the kids say that they want to learn how, they want to sew their costume, you are as a coach allowed to teach them how to use a sewing machine. Or and you're also allowed to bring in experts. If someone wants to learn how to make a wooden flute, you're allowed to bring in experts to teach how to make wooden flutes. You certainly can plan and teach spontaneous, and you can do spontaneous a lot. And there's not really outside assistance in spontaneous, so there's no reason why you can't use it spontaneous as teaching moments for how to, for instance, do a structure more efficiently, or how to make things balance better, or whatever. The other thing coaches has to do is, in particular for primary and Division I teams, you can be a scribe for those teams to fill out their forms. One daunting thing is the number of forms. When you see the number of forms and how much you're supposed to fill out, it can be quite terrifying and overwhelming. But you know, so when I was coaching the younger teams, I would sort of work on forms over a course of many weeks so that it wasn't quite so overwhelming. Because again, you cannot, as the coach, write the form and say what the teams decided. It needs to be their own words. They need to dictate to you what they say. The other thing I think is that these kids, when you're coaching a team, can be some of the most hilarious moments that you've ever had when a team is brainstorming and thinking about, you know, all sorts of crazy ways of solving a problem. You know, it's quite enjoyable, and you should be trying to enjoy it along with them and laughing along with them. And you should also remember that for teaching, for coaching Odyssey of the Mind, that makes you a very special person. It's not everyone who's willing to take on a crazy group of kids trying to solve a problem by themselves, especially at the, you know, the primary and Division I ages. It's a lot like herding cats, and they don't necessarily all want to go the same direction at the same time. So, you know, you should not take it lightly. You're a very special person that you're doing this. So in the long-term problem, if you're in Division I and the divisions above that, there are 3 basically scored elements of the competition. There's the long-term problem, which we've been talking about, and that's worth 200 points. How the long-term problem is presented artistically or creatively is scored for style, and that's worth 50 points. And then the spontaneous problem is worth 100 points. And it must be underlined that there are many cases where a team that won the long-term problem is not the winning team, that all 3 of these elements are critical. And, you know, you don't want to, you want to try to balance in your sessions, work on all 3 of them, and not just focus on one or the other. I think we should keep going. Yeah.
I wanted Nancy to actually talk a little bit about style.
Okay.
Because we had talked a little bit about last year, and it's important to highlight your team's exceptional creativity. So that 50 points, while it seems like it kind of insignificant, it's really not. And one thing that Nancy was talking about last year is the importance of style, and how there are always 2 required, 2 choice, and then 1 is like the overall effectiveness. Can you speak to just like maybe a little bit about what happened last year, Nancy?
Sure. One of the difficult parts, I guess, for me as a style or staging judge is not being able to talk to the children in person. And so I communicated with the coaches, and it was a little bit tedious going back and forth. So hopefully we'll get it worked out a little smoother this year. In style, you have the style form that you fill out. You are going to choose, the kids will choose something that they are especially proud of. And you have 2 usually free choices, and you have 2 required elements, And then the last one is always how all of these things work together to complement the performance. And it might be, I know from years past, that one year it was a style element was a flower that grows. It was like an Alice in Wonderland takeoff. And so they had to do a flower that grew somehow. It might be a poem that the team has to write. Classical being musical this time, one of the required elements might be a song that they have to write. So they will tell you those things that you have to do, but they also give you free choice. And I was looking at the picture that we're seeing here on the picture where the style, and I'm assuming that's a bird of some kind. Beautiful headdress. If you notice, the rest of the costume is very colorful, but it's not as elaborate as that headdress is. So if the team were to say the bird's costume, for instance, the judges would have to judge every single part of the costume. If they, on the other hand, said the bird's headdress, which is the most unusual aspect, without the headdress, the costume is colorful, but it's not anything amazing. They chose the headdress, they would get a lot more points for it because it was very specific. So ask your team if they want to be a style form, if they want it to be, say, the costume of a person in the script, have them look at everything about that costume. And if it's not all really good, but they have maybe one amazing part of it, they should pick that one part. We want to get them as many points as possible, but the judges have to judge what is written on that style form. So that's one thing I noticed, that if it wasn't very specific, then I had to go back and communicate with the coach and say, can they be more specific? Is there a certain part? And I have to do that without I'm not saying don't put that down there. So that would be outside assistance, but I can just ask them, is there a particular part of that costume that you think was really, really amazing? Maybe you used all throwaway materials to do that. Maybe it's the kind of materials that you want the judges to look at, not the open bag. So get the kids to really look and see what is the most unusual thing about their costumes or their backdrop or whatever, and then check the problem. Make sure that what they put down for style is not something that's going to be judged in the long-term problem. If, for instance, the problem says you must have a background that shows the whole scene that you're doing, well, then you could not say for style the backdrop that shows the scene, because that's already been judged. You could, however, come back and say, we'd like you to judge the recycled materials we used to make our backdrop. And that's a little bit different, so that you could do that. But it's just a matter of getting the kids to really be specific about what they're most proud of. And that's one thing I love when I'm talking to the kids. If they put something down that can't be scored, kids are great at choosing something else. The coaches might be hyperventilating, but the kids are really good And I'll just tell them, I said, you know, I want you to get a lot of points, and they've already scored that in your long term. And so that wouldn't get you many points. Put your heads together and think of something else that you guys did that you can show. Maybe it's a costume, maybe it's a prop.
Maybe it's a
Some-
musical number that you created or a dance. It could even be the way that somebody acts, like maybe they use a certain vocal quality, or their theatrics are just off the charts, and you want to highlight the way that somebody acted in a certain scene. There's just so many options for it, but you really want to capitalize on the strengths of your team members as you have them choose it. Does that sound all right, Nancy?
Yeah, it does. I saw one where they did everything in rhyme, and that was not required in the regular problem. So that was an aspect that stood out and made their performance different. So I think that's what you want to do, is to teach the kids as they're working what's really something that stands out about this.
Exactly.
And just make sure, always have them go back and check the problem to see that it's not the same thing as the problem requires.
Right. Okay, when you're looking at sources for your long-term problem, you're going to want to make sure that you read the program guide all the way through at least once. You're going to want to look at the detailed instructions of the long-term problem and reread that multiple times. You want to check the clarifications. Even if you don't submit a clarification, others will be, and there will be, on the website, you'll be able to find general clarifications about your problem, which will be coming in throughout the year. So you want to check those, because if they make a clarification and you haven't checked those and your team went in a different direction, not knowing that, then that could actually hinder their scores. Other sources, of course, are coaches, coordinators, problem captains, and we regional directors. There are lots of different parts of the long-term problem. Make sure that you read them all. Here they are all listed. And how does a coach do this? Well, you're going to want to plan. It's kind of like being a teacher, but you're not really, you're just keeping the structure, but plan 10 to 15 minutes per activity. Start with brainstorming and spontaneous, kind of get things rolling. Keep your meetings fairly short at the beginning, and then they can kind of evolve into longer as you're working through things. Don't worry about introducing the long-term problem for a few weeks, or at least for a couple weeks. We have a shorter timeline, so you may want to introduce it sooner than we normally would, but I definitely wouldn't introduce it the first meeting. Make sure that you chunk it for the kids. It's 5 pages, and if you try to attack all of it at once, it's going to be a little daunting. So you can kind of digest it a little bit and then start solving. And you can use spontaneous approaches to figure out what you might want to do. So for instance, let's say that the problem requires the use of a musical instrument. You could do a spontaneous where everybody names musical instruments that they could create. And you could even have them create different, like a hands-on spontaneous, create a musical instrument that will make a sound with more than 3 notes or something like that, or a percussion instrument, like different ways you could create a percussion instrument. So all of those could be brainstorming and spontaneous sessions that could lead to a good solution for your long-term problem. And try to end with something silly just for fun. Just to end on a kind of a happy note with the kids, because all work and no play, of course, makes it kind of daunting, and you want it to be a really positive experience. So this is an example, a sample first session. Geneva, you want to speak to this a little bit?
Sure. Okay, so this is I think it's on 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of depends on whether you're doing in-person sessions or video sessions. And if you're doing in person, you can have a snack, or I mean, if people are wearing masks, then maybe not a snack, but you want people to get to know each other. So having them share something funny about themselves or something that they're good at. If you find that someone's really good at writing, or someone is really good at dancing, or someone's really good at playing musical instruments, then the rest of the team will know that they can leverage that kind of skill in their performance. I think the next part would be to talk about spontaneous. And in spontaneous, if you're in an in-person tournament, spontaneous is, and even not in person, there's two components to it. One is really creative ideas that you can think of, and the other is speed, because a lot of times these things have real big constraints on the time. And so you can work on those two skills independently. This is an example where you have them say their name, and you see how many times they can go all the way around the table saying their name in 1 minute, for instance. And what you'll find is if you do this every week, they'll get much faster at remembering how to say their name and remembering that it's their turn. The first couple times they will be like, oh, it's my turn. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I got to say my name. But if they get used to that kind of speed and thinking on their feet and thinking about what's coming towards them and doing something easy, then they'll get used to how they do that kind of thinking. And then I think in the first session, you want to talk about Odyssey of Mind, what it is. If you have experienced members on your teams, you can have them do the talking about what's important and what it is. You can, if they don't have experience, then you can, give an overview yourself. I think it's also very important to introduce the concept of outside assistance and what parents can do and what they can't do. I think a lot of my teams, the kids were very good about saying, no, don't say anything that's outside assistance. If their parents, because parents coming in at the end of practice or seeing what's going on will make helpful suggestions on what could be done. And the kids, if the kids understand outside assistance, they'll say, no, you can't tell me that, and remind the parents they cannot. I think we go next sheet. Then I think it's a good idea to run at least a couple of spontaneous problems. And for me, it worked really well to do smaller teams within the team, because then you have things that you can discuss between the two smaller teams. This is only just for practicing, obviously, so that you can, for instance, you can run the verbal and then you can compare the answers, or you can run a hands-on and say, oh, well, what worked with your solution and what worked with your solution, and figure out kind of the best of both worlds. And then in the first session, you'll want to talk about logistics, what the schedule is, what they're going to have to do, when they're going to have to get it done. One example of something you could do just as an ending activity is give them the 8 letters of the word teamwork and see if they can put the word together, and or find the largest word within the teamwork word. And you could have them come up with a team name and then leave. So this is a 2-hour first session. So outside assistance,
Yeah, so this is really, really important. Like it's really important that everybody understands, your team members and your parents, that the parents must not be giving them ideas. Older brothers and sisters, no outside ideas. And even if there's like a younger brother or sister who's in the room, they are not allowed to give other ideas. The team members must conceive, design, construct, and perform their own ideas. So if they don't know how to create something and you do, and you really want them to do it, you have to do, you can do a teaching session of how to create something, but not how to create exactly that thing. So my kids wanted to sew cat costumes when I was sew costumes when I was a primary coach. And so I taught them with very thick material, a large needle and yarn, how to go up and down and create a stitch and then turn it inside out and stuff it. And so it was a very simple workshop that I gave them on sewing, but I did not show them exactly how to make a cat's tail. So when they wanted to make the cat's tail, they had to use what I had taught them to then, translate that into what they're going to create. If you want to teach them how to do paper mache, or you want to teach them how to, or have somebody else teach them. I know that one of my parents Jennifer Cho, you had somebody come and talk about engineering a little bit at one of your meetings, I believe, just to give some kids some ideas about things without pitching an exact idea, but just some thoughts about engineering and how things work. So your parents could even give a workshop on something that they know how to do in case the kids want to use it. So remember, this is not your problem to solve. You can, especially in Division 1, write things down, and you may even fill out those forms for them, but they must dictate what it is. So make sure that you know that's, and it's great if a kid can take all that on, that's actually better, because you want to get them trained up so that they really feel like it's their team. Coaches are allowed to ask team members questions or to prod them to think about their solutions and how to improve them. However, these questions must not lead the students. Like, don't you think it would be better if you did this? That's too leading. Okay, but you can say, do you think, or taking videos even, and just having the kids like look at the video and say, what did you notice? Do you think that the people will be able to hear? Could you all hear what was being said? Or what might you do to improve your performance? That kind of thing. So be the guide on side, not the stage on the stage. Make sure that the cleanup is responsibility of your kids too. Otherwise, you'll find yourself doing a lot of cleaning after they're gone. Leave time for that, and make sure you teach parents about those outside assistants. You're not even supposed to do their hair or dress them. It's supposed to be all on them. They should be able to do those things themselves. All right, we're gonna leave these slides in about outside assistants so that you can refer back to this later, but we decided we weren't actually going to go through each of them. There are different scenarios that will help you so that you have an idea what outside assistance means. Okay, so OA is outside assistance. Geneva, do you want to talk about some of the changes compared to previous?
Yeah, so I think that the whole membership thing is a little confusing, and I'm not sure that we know completely exactly all the details. And as we have questions, we try to forward them to our state captain and our state director. And so, but in any case, based on the program guide, there are two types of memberships. There are virtual team memberships and there are regular memberships. Only problem 2, 3 and the primary are virtual this year. So the state tournament's online, and the videos for the state tournament can only be used for Worlds for problem 2, 3 or primary. So if you are planning to do problem 2, 3 or the primary problem, then you can participate. You can get the virtual membership and participate in the state tournament, which is virtual, and use it for the World's virtual tournament. However, if you want to do problem 1 of the other problems, or even if you want to do an in-person problem, then you need to have a regular membership. And you can do both, but they are separate competitions, and so you would have to purchase the virtual team and to participate in the virtual competition, and the regular one to participate in the regular competition. There is more flexibility in team membership for the virtual teams. You don't have to be all part of the same school or part of the same organization, and so there's more flexibility there. But I do think it is a little bit confusing about which membership. I think if you want to keep all your options open, getting a school membership, which is a regular membership, is probably the best option. If you have more than one team. If you're only one team from your school, then it's probably you can choose either one, especially if you're doing problem 2 or 3. There will be, so for clarifications, the other change is that there's a new category in clarifications, which is called video submission, which is just to help teams with submitting their videos as part of the virtual competition. And then I guess the last point, which is different from last year, is that if there is no official competition before World Finals, then you can apply to go directly to World Finals. But We will be having the state tournament this year. So if you want to participate in World Finals, you will need to participate in the state tournament. That is different from last year. Last year, you were not required to participate in the state tournament before going to World Finals, but this year, as far as you can read from the program guide, and again, we can get clarifications on that if there's somebody who wants an exception to that. I think that was all the things that I noticed that were really different from previous year.
Yeah, and I think important thing to note is that, I mean, most of you who are here today are really just interested in giving your kids an experience with Odyssey, very first experience or an early experience with Odyssey. So by buying that school membership, you will have access to those 5 problems, those 5 competitive problems, and as many primary as you want. And you'll be able to compete in our virtual state tournament. So don't get confused about the problem 2 and 3 and primary. For our state tournament, you can actually present in all of the problems for the state tournament. It's just the world tournament that there's some clarification issues with which will be in the virtual tournament and which will be in the in-person tournament for virtual world finals.
And I think we have a lot more slides in our presentation that we're probably not going to go through right now because we're thinking.
Yeah, I wanted to tap Abby. Are you still there, Abby? Hi, I wanted to tap Abby to talk a little bit about problem 3, because I do think that is going to be a popular problem this year. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that one.
Sure. I have to confess that I left my copy of the full problem on my work computer, so you guys caught me a little flat-footed. But problem 3 is an awesome problem this year. I mean, it's always an awesome problem, but I'm here to sell you on why this is the problem that everybody should do. So problem 3 is called the classics problem. Typically, it has themes of classical art, literature, history. So it's really for your sort of liberal arts type kids who like that sort of thing. This year, it is a musical. I'm super excited. I think it's called Insert Name Here, the musical. The idea being, and you can kind of read about this in the synopsis, that the teams do have to create an 8-minute musical about a historic figure. You can't just pick any historic figure. We're going for obscure historic figures this year, which is exciting. And they have a list. Typically, the list is in the problem. They usually give you like 8 to choose from. This year, super exciting. They've been expanding the list as they find more historic figures, obscure historic figures. So if you go on the Odyssey website under the team section, you can see here the list of lesser known historic figures. So your team's going to be researching these folks. They're going to pick the one that intrigues them the most, and they're going to create a musical about this person and their life and their history. So it is very similar to Hamilton for folks who like Hamilton. I'm really excited just to research some of these characters. While this is a very kind of arts and history oriented problem, Odyssey does like to make sure that your kids are well-rounded in their creativity. So there are some kind of technical engineering elements that they sneak in there for your artsy kids. This year you have to have a lighting effect as part of your show. I believe you also have to have a set change.
All right.
So this is actually a really good example just for any of them of what the long-term problem looks like. It's a 4 or 5 page document that lays out the problem. It is a lot to read and digest, even for me as a problem captain who's been looking at these for years. So I do, take your time, read it over, digest it. It talks about the required elements that every skit has to have, your historic figure, your lighting effect, your songs. You have to have 3 songs. It will then talk to you about how the judges are going to score those elements on a point system. Totally, you can get up to 200 points in your long-term problem, as well as an additional points, 50 points for the style, which is what Nancy talked about. And the style elements are our team did not just do the bare minimum to check the boxes. Our teams went above and beyond, and we were creative, and we did things that are just unique to our team, and we think we should get lots of points for them. which you absolutely should. This is the style elements. Let's see what else could.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk. Thank you, Abby. I wanted Nancy to also talk about the parameters. Like you're going to see here that there's a certain amount of space that we typically provide, which is 7 feet by 10 feet for this particular problem, larger if possible. But one thing Nancy noted in the virtual world was that teams submitting videos often would use their cul-de-sac or their yard as a place to videotape. But we wanted to encourage people to keep close to the camera, because if you have your child running down the driveway and staying their lines, and your camera is, of course, set at a certain place trying to capture all of this, it's very unlikely they will be heard. So you want to try to make sure that your presentation is in a certain area, so it will be well received. It's a little tough with these new video parameters. You can certainly have more space, but that doesn't always translate into a better performance. So
it's a challenge that we have both when we're doing in-person competitions and in the virtual competition. Often our problem 3 is given the stage, since we're theatrical, which is, great for teams that have large sets and elaborate costumes and can take up that space. But sometimes, especially with the younger teams, if they're not used to performing in a large space like a stage or outside where sound dissipates a lot, it's very difficult to hear the kids. And we can't give you points for things that we didn't hear. We can't laugh at the jokes that we didn't hear. We can't. So talking to your team and encouraging them to find the right space to where to film, big enough that they can move around and express themselves, but maybe not so big that they're overwhelmed by the space.
exactly.
Pam,
Awesome. Yes.
one thing I wanted to just put in there about style, watch Abby's video, because that gives a lot of information on what is style and what contributes to it. And I think the video will help a lot.
I agree. The video is awesome because it says, okay, this is one way you could do it, and this is another way you could do it, and it compares and contrasts, things that make it exciting and things that make it dull, and things that so there's lots of really great examples of ways to do things in a great performance way, and ways to do things that are less interesting. So I think it's a really great video for the kids. I think it's very amusing. They did a great job.
Question. Can I access all this detailed information about each problem before signing for the membership yet?
You can access the synopses, but not the full problem until you have a membership.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's right, because the confusion is we don't know which problem they are gonna get. And then I understand it's only, I should register virtual, but you are even saying that it's confusing which one to pick. So really this is.
Yeah, I would use the problem synopses and read through those, knowing that there's going to be a vehicle problem is problem 1, or a technical problem is problem 2. And so, each problem has kind of a different view of, kind of what the elements are. The problem 4 is the balsa problem. So if your kids like to construct things with balsa, that would be a good problem for them. There's the classics problem, and then there's the circus problem. So there are performance problems, historical problems, problems requiring technical elements. So you can get a pretty good overview of what the problems are by just reading these synopses. And this is available to you without a membership.
Yes, I noticed that. Okay, thanks.
And I remember when I did compete as a team, that this was like a big deal for our team, like sitting down, reading through even just the synopses and kind of working out as a team which ones we wanted to do. What was our first choice? What was our second choice? Because we had some kids who wanted to go super technical and some kids who wanted to go super theatrical. So, I mean, even that was a great kind of team building activity, figuring out how to diplomatically come to which problem we wanted to do. And then if you have to coordinate with other teams, how do you negotiate with them as to who gets to do what problem?
Yeah.
Can you guys post the link to your slides in the chat so that we can go back and view it when we want to?
We'll go ahead and put that actually up on our website.
Okay.
So you'll be able to find it on the Nova East website. And if you followed our website, you'll actually get a reminder when it's posted, so you can look at it then. But I'll
Okay.
actually download as a PDF, and then you can go ahead and jump in and look at it all again. Okay.
And thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And then I haven't had a chance to look at the website that much yet. Is there an email address for you guys?
Oh yeah. You can email me, pamela.clark@apsfa.us. Let me see.
CLARK.
CLARK, right? No E.
Uh-huh.
So, and there is contact information on like the who's who. If you go to who's who on our site, you can see my email is right here. Nancy's is just below. Geneva's is
Not
here.
sharing.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're not sharing.
Thank
I think
you.
we're all on there.
Oh, sorry.
We're
Thank you.
all there.
Yeah, we're all there, so you can bug all of us if you want.
Yeah, we're all on there. So yeah, feel free to go ahead and bug us. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are all our
thank you.
emails under who's who.
Who we are.
All right.
Are there any other last questions?
Yeah, and before we go on, you will receive scores for the day. It won't look like this. It'll be all virtual, but you will receive scores. Primary teams will receive virtual sticky notes. But you'll want to make sure that you look at these things with your team, especially the virtual sticky notes once they come in. And please do plan to attend the online awards ceremony and view other videos of teams, which will be available. And make sure that you enjoy the process. Like Geneva was saying, really try to keep your sense of humor. Toward the end, it becomes fairly stressful because you're trying to herd cats, like we said, and make sure they get everything done. And just try to enjoy it along with them. You're going to probably reflect on this experience and realize it's maybe one of the more important things that you've led in your life, because you've created an atmosphere where kids get to feel their own power as thinkers and problem solvers. And it's an amazing experience. You'll go away from it exhausted and also just like in disbelief of what your kids have accomplished. Okay. Any questions? We'll stay on for a little bit if anybody has further questions. It's 10:30 now, so I don't want to keep people longer than we said. But I also want to honor the fact that people may have some questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video if I can. And then we'll take some questions here.